sort of a rounded cone finish so that it kind of sits up off your head. I don't really know how to describe it. I don't think I'm doing a particularly good job. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me for episode 53 of the Hilo Stitch podcast. I'm your host Kristen, and I'm here to talk to you about, what else? Knitting. I will also be talking about all things knitting and yarn related, and maybe not so knitting and yarn related as well. So if you don't know me already, my name is Kristen Janik. I'm a semi-retired knitting pattern designer, a knitting instructor, and an all-around knitting enthusiast. I am podcasting to you from my home in the Maryland suburbs of Washington, D.C., where I live with my two little boys, Ollie, who is 7, and JJ, who turns 9 today, as well as my husband, a very tall man from Peru, and our annoying dog and cat and fish. When I'm not knitting, you can find me doing yoga, vegetable gardening, watching Orioles baseball, and drinking wine, but it is mostly about the knitting, so let's go ahead and start talking about it. Alright, so I wanted to start off our on and off the needle segment by showing you guys that I have finished my pullover. So hopefully you'll remember this is my mashup of the Tulip and Offering of Trees patterns from Melody Hoffman. So I have been working on this since, I want to say November. And so what it is a top-down raglan pullover with this scalloped hem. And I added these sort of braid cable looking dealies from the Offering of Trees pattern. So this pullover is knit with a, kind of sport DK weight yarn held together with the lace weight mohair. So I used Durera Natura's Ulysse in the Merlot colorway, and then I used the Kid Mohair silk from Fiber for the People in Kalamata. So you can see I did not hold double around the cuffs, the hem, or the collar. I just did the plain DK weight yarn there, but I held double throughout the body. I am really happy with this. I think it ended up being just about the perfect length. I did make some modifications to it, so I'm gonna go ahead and move my chair over and sit down and tell you about those. All right, so I did make a fair number of modifications to this pattern, not just because I mixed up two patterns, but because there were some other changes that I thought needed to be made to make it the perfect sweater for me. So first, I lengthened the scalloped hem, mostly because I thought that the instructions were a little unclear there. It said to stop knitting the body when it was 4 inches shorter than you wanted it to be, but then the instructions for the hem only made a 2-inch hem. So I thought something was a little off there. So I made the body about 3 inches shorter than I wanted it to be, and then did a 3-inch hem. So it's a slightly longer hem. I did cast on 8 more stitches than the pattern called for, and then skipped the first round of increases, of raglan increases, so it's a slightly wider neckline. The pattern also calls for a provisional cast on, I believe. No, a tubular cast on, which is fine. I like tubular cast ons for smaller circumferences, but I find them a little fiddly for larger circumferences. So what I did instead was the alternating cable cast on, which still, I mean, it's a dark color, so it's hard to see, but it still blends nicely into the 1x1 rib, but it's not quite as fiddly. I changed the final number of sleeve stitches. I did 4 fewer decreases on the sleeves. I didn't want them, I didn't want it to end up being super tight around the wrist because I tend to pull my sleeves up. So since I did fewer decreases, I also changed the decrease rate on the sleeves. And then I bound off my sleeves with a tubular bind off, which I don't even remember if the pattern recommends a bind off. That's not like a major modification. I just think tubular bind offs look really nice for cuffs. So I knit the cropped body, and that was a good length for me to make a sweater that was not actually cropped. So if you see again, it really hits like right at the waistband. These are not super high-waisted jeans. It's kind of a mid-rise jean. So if these were a little bit higher waisted jeans, that would probably work better. But so this hits right here at the waistline as long as I lift my arms up, and you can see I am wearing a camisole underneath because I do move my arms, and I don't think anybody needs to see my pasty white stomach in the middle of February underneath my sweater. So I am, in terms of mashing up the patterns, I basically just copied the instructions for making the sort of braided cable looking things, but continued the same yoke increase rate that is given in the tulip pattern. I just put the decreases on either side of, the increases on either side of that detail. And then I did knit a few extra rounds in the yoke because this is created by pulling stitches up from rows below. So it does kind of compress that a little bit. Okay, so I think that is all of the details, and I will also include them on the Ravelry project page. So I have my first, well, it's definitely my first finished sweater for 2022. I did already have the Miss Hat, so I guess that was my first finished object, but it's my first finished sweater for 2022. I love it. Another reason I'm wearing a camisole with it is because I personally find mohair can be a little prickly, but it's just a camisole, so it's bare arms under the sleeves, and that is fine. I think this is probably the second day that I have worn my sweater. It is very comfortable. I knit the third size, which was a 38.8 inch bust, which gives me about 3 inches of positive ease. And I think I did, because of changing a little bit the stitch count for the cast on, I had a couple of extra stitches, I think, when I got to the dividing round for the yoke, and I think I put them in the sleeves. So overall, it is more or less the correct numbers for the third size that is in the pattern. And I don't remember how many sizes it has, but I want to say like 9 or 10, maybe. So I found some of the instruction. I forgot. So I also, I mentioned this in the previous podcast, I also, about halfway through, changed the way that I made the scallops. The instructions have you do a staggered bind off on one side and a short row on the other. But I thought that the staggered bind off looked really sloppy, especially compared to the short row. So when I was about halfway through, I changed it and just did short rows on both sides to shape the scallops. There were some parts of the instructions that I didn't think were super clear, but were easy enough to puzzle out if you are a relatively experienced knitter. Again, I really am not sure where the discrepancy is with the body length, because a 2-inch hem worked 4 inches before the sweater's as long as you want is not, it's not right. And I don't know if maybe I just missed something or if that really is an error in the pattern. So if you decide to knit the tulip pullover, you can be on the lookout for that. So my first finished sweater for 2022, and I think the only finished object I have for this episode, but I have lots of other things that are still on the needle, so we can take a peek at them. So I'll just put my chair on top of the bag. The other thing that's been getting lots of my attention is my Snowy Forest pullover. This is going really well. I'm really happy with the yarn. It is so soft. There is a little bit of like residual dye coming off of my hands when I am knitting this. I don't know if it's from the floofy yarn or the hemp merino sport. If I had to guess, I would say it's probably from the hemp merino sport, just because I would guess that maybe the hemp doesn't absorb as much of the dye. But again, that's just a guess, and it's no big deal. I will certainly, you know, wash it extra carefully, maybe add some, what is it you add to get the dye to stick? Vinegar or something else that sets dye that I can't remember. It's not important. When I wash it, I'll take care of that. So I'm really happy that I modified the neck on this to go ahead and join it together right at the beginning, because I think it gives it's just so much easier to see how it's looking with that neck already tacked down and giving you that folded collar. So the way this works is that it's dominated by these really big cables. Come here, behave yourself. It's dominated by these really big cables. But the thing is, they're so big that you're only working these cable crossings like every 2 inches. And other than that, the rows are really simple. So you really have to pay attention on these cable crosses because the cables are really big. You can't really do cabling without a cable needle, which kind of slows you down. And also you are increasing within the cables. So you've really got to stay focused on those rounds where you do those cable crosses. But the rest of it is just these tiny little, it starts out as a right twist, left twist, and then it switches to a 1/2 cable. Those are really easy to do. And then it's just knit some pearls. So for just those, let's see, it's been 1, 2, I think I'm about to do one more, and then there's one more after that. It's just those 4 main rounds where you're doing the big cables and the increases. You've really got to focus, but the rest of it is nice and kind of easy to memorize, mindless knitting. So I just switched this to the bigger needle. Again, my light is not great. I think I'm gonna just break here and throw in a photo that I have. So I took this photo when I was switching it to the bigger cable on the interchangeable so you could get a better idea. This is looking beautiful. It is so soft and it is going really quickly. So I am really pretty hopeful about having this done before the end of February and being able to wear it. Once you're through the yoke, the body and the sleeves are plain stackinette. It's a little bit of a cropped body, so it's not like a super long sweater. And the sleeves are kind of oversized and then pull in at the cuffs. So even there, you're not trying to really keep track of decreases. So wonderful project. This is one of the first projects I'm working on for my Make 9, and I am thrilled with it so far. Maybe by the next episode, it might even be done. That's probably a little ambitious, but we'll see. So that is a main project I've been working on. I've also been working on another Make 9 project, which doesn't really look like much right now. This is the Carbayal hat, and this is just a ribbed beanie. It starts with tubular cast on and a little bit of a contrast color, and then you're holding 2 strands of fingering weight yarn together for this marled look. So these are mine. This orange one is the yarn that's left over from my knot front crop. So it is Magpie Fibers Domestic Fingering. And this one is Ironsides from Fiber for the People on one of her fingering weight bases that I had used for the Good Dividend socks that I did 2 years ago, I think. So it is just 1x1 rib. That's it. There's this, you can see a line here for folding the brim up, and other than that, you're just knitting round and round and round until you get to the crown decreases. So this is styled to have sort of a, I don't want to say pointy, but it's not really supposed to be slouchy. It's supposed to kind of have a conical shape. So this is, I'm knitting, again, 2 strands of fingering weight together is like a DK weight, and I'm knitting on US 5, which is pretty tight for that. And actually, I think the pattern called for US 4, but I thought that was just too much. So it is a pretty stiff fabric. Of course, it's ribbing, so it will stretch, but I think that kind of stiffer fabric is going to give it that more, again, not like conical, like a sharp point, but sort of a rounded cone finish so that it kind of sits up off your head. I don't really know how to describe it. I don't think I'm doing a particularly good job, but that's that. And I had originally cast that on because I wanted to kind of get a quick jump start into some of my Make 9 projects. But it turns out knitting 1x1 rib over and over and over is a little boring. So I'm kind of keeping it as my TV knitting. But it's not quite going as fast as I was expecting. Certainly no big deal. I do have one more project I'm going to show you guys a little bit later. And the other thing that I've been working on is just some socks. I've got a pair of socks in the car that are jaywalkers. It's been forever since I did a pair of jaywalkers, and that's my school pickup line knitting. And then I have just a pair of right now what are plain socks, plain vanilla socks that are in my kids' room that I knit on when I used to read bedtime stories, but now my older son wants to read to me, so I knit on that while he reads. And eventually they're going to be a pair of non-Euclidean socks, which is a pattern by Sarah Jordan, PA Knitwit, and that's it's all very plain except for the heel, so I can just knit plain, plain, plain until they're as long as I want, and then go to the pattern, do the heel, and then they're plain, regular, plain old socks to the toe. So that's a good kind of kids' room, easy project to keep in there. I think that is all I have been working on. I have not picked up my Andawa. I'm really itching since I finished a sweater to cast on a new sweater, but I already have so much on the needles. I'm really trying to not do that. But actually finishing a sweater was a nice reminder of how nice it is to make your own clothes. And I really enjoy that. And now I'm like, I want to knit all the sweaters, but that's not very practical, especially since we are now into February. So if I cast on a new sweater now, by the time I would finish it, it would be, starting to get too warm to wear it. So I think that's it for this episode. All right, for Adelante, I do have a couple of things in the works. So I've showed you guys several times the worsted weight brioche shawl, and I'll just break here and pop in a few photos. So this is actually, or was actually, my dad's Christmas gift that I finished, not too bad, like a month after Christmas. And since I wanted to actually gift it to him, I went ahead and took some pattern photos. It is about 20 degrees in those photos. I was outside for, I think, about 10 minutes. And I was very, very cold, but I wanted to go ahead and get those done. So I did gift that to my dad. And he seemed very happy with it, and we have a few testers working on the pattern, so it is coming by the end of this month. If you want to make sure you find out about that, please go ahead and sign up for my newsletter. I will include the link in the description box down below, or you can visit mediaperuana.com/newsletter. And the other thing that I am working on is this long lost sweater pattern that I have finally gotten back on the needles. So if you had missed this story, I had designed a sweater pattern for a yarn dyer who was going to publish a collection of patterns, and it unfortunately never saw the light of day. And she had reached out and said, go ahead and do what you like with it. So I'm going to go ahead and publish it. It needs quite a bit of work, I think. But I have gotten it on the needles. So it was originally a bottom-up set-in sleeve. I think I'm just going to make it a drop shoulder. I'm not 100% sold on that yet, but that's where I am leaning. And basically it has this, this is a slipped garter stitch pattern that's very textured. And because it is slipped stitches, it pulls the sweater upward. So it kind of gives it a natural curve, rising up a little bit in the front and the back and longer on the sides. So that is sort of the main design element, just some simple cables. And then on the back, the same slip stitch pattern, no cables, so it's a slightly wider pattern there on the back. This is going to be kind of a slightly swingy design, so it's just a little bit wider at the hip than it is going to be at the bust. And it's not going to necessarily be cropped, but kind of hit right at the waistband, and it just has a short hem. It's not really supposed to draw it inward. It's really supposed to just kind of be decorative, because I do want it to be a little bit loose and swingy. So this is on the needles. I am using Kim Dye's yarn. This color I don't think has a name yet, and I don't remember off the top of my head what the base is called, so let me grab the skein. Right, so here it is in the skein, and this is her Falkland wool base. So it's about a DK weight yarn, and it is really surprisingly soft. It is not like a super tight twist or tight ply, but it still has lots of structure and really nice and soft. You know, we get kind of fixated on merino sometimes, but there are a lot of other nice wools out there that are quite soft as well. So that is underway. It is not where I would like it to be at this point, but you know, pattern design is now just kind of for fun here and there, and I have had some translation projects, actual paying work, better paying work, that has been taking up my time. So that has really been more of my focus, but that is on the needles and underway. Again, it's this kind of, once you give it a few rounds, you can really easily memorize the pattern. Don't have to be sitting there with the instructions. I do still need to figure out where I want to put the decreases between the waist and the bust, but there aren't very many. So it's really going to kind of be like every 3 inches or 4 inches that I have to decrease. So that should be some pretty easy autopilot knitting for a little bit. And those are a couple of projects that I am working on to turn into patterns. I do have a pattern that's going to be published by Knit Picks this month. I think it's just in like a couple of weeks, like right in the middle of February. So definitely by the next episode of the podcast, I will be able to show that off. It is a kind of little light spring t-shirt design that is really cute and uses a saddle shoulder construction that I have, I have not finished my sample. As I think I've mentioned before, when you're working with Knit Picks, you are not required to knit your own samples. So you kind of knit what you need in order to create the pattern. So if you need to knit the whole thing, you do that, but I really only needed to actually sit and knit the first part to kind of get it going, and then from there did not need to continue knitting it. I really do want one though. So hopefully maybe I will get that back underway in the near future. It is a more of a spring, maybe late spring design. So no major rush, but I will be able to tell you about that in the next episode. I have been doing some sewing, not a ton, but a bit. I really have been focusing on my sweaters, but I did finish this cute top. It's now falling off the hanger. All right, so this is the KEMPER top. This is a pattern from Seamwork, and you might recall in a previous podcast I showed you this fabric, which turns out to be completely see-through. But it ended up working out really nicely for this. As long as I put a camisole under it, it is just fine. So what this is a sleeveless top that the yoke is a double layer of fabric, and here it is designed, it has seams down the front, and so kind of the seam allowances show through that make it look a little bit like princess seams on the front. Then it has this kind of floofy, ruffly peplum, and then the same seams at the back, but not that kind of triangle shaped yoke, but still those kind of princess looking seams down the back. So this is really cute. I actually wish I had knit one size smaller. Sewn, whatever. So I made the size 6, and I wish I had done the 4. It just is a little bit overwhelming, I think, because, you know, this is kind of so floofy down here that it kind of swallows me up a little bit. And I think, given how much ease there is at the bust, I probably could have gone one size smaller, but it's fine. And I think this will be really cute if it's ever safe to go eat in restaurants again. This will be cute for a date night. And I took a few modeled photos, so I'll pop 1 or 2 in here. So the fabric is really cute. It's this Swiss dot, I think it's called. So it's like textured dots. So it's just a little bit more interesting than plain black. And what you can do with this pattern, which maybe I will do someday, is you could actually, like what they did in the sample is they used like a solid white, and then for the yoke and peplum, they used a kind of eyelet white fabric, which just really makes it look cute. I mean, you could definitely do like a super bold color block kind of contrast, but I thought that was really cute. Just those cute 2 different textures with the same color. So maybe someday I'll make one again, and I will do that. But I don't think I had any major problems with this. Working out how to get that double yoke folded over and all sewn up correctly was a challenge, but I got it, and I don't see any major problems with it. It's actually done in such a way that the seam at the shoulder is folded into the inside, so there's no raw seams at the shoulders. It looks a little nicer on this side. So normally you would have like the seams underneath, and they're not there. They're folded into the fabric, and instead you just have the bias tape. So there's bias tape around the armholes and the back neckline. For this one, I didn't have black, but I had a dark gray, and I think that looks fine. So yeah, really cute. Very happy with it. Really ready for some warm weather so I can start wearing it. Over winter, we had a snowstorm. We had several. Nothing super big, but enough for the kids to play in. And as much as I like wearing my hand knits, I think I wouldn't mind an early spring, because I'd like to start wearing some of my hand sews instead of not just my hand knits. So that's the only project that I have finished recently. As I said, I had a big translation project that I was working on that I just finished up, and so in preparation for that, I cut out the pieces for the metamorphic dress. I'm gonna pop a photo in here. So this is a reversible dress. You can wear it with either layer. And I showed off the fabric in a previous episode of the podcast, but I have cut out all my pieces and I am ready to get started on that. I might actually start today. We will see. Today is JJ's 9th birthday. We let him have the day off. He's been doing really well at school. And you know, his brother has a summer birthday, so he always gets his birthday off. So we let him have the day off. So he's kind of in and out and may not start on the dress today. Might wait till tomorrow. I still have to finish frosting his cake. I have not bought any new fabric. I have been looking at some new patterns, but I haven't planned anything new yet. We'll see. It's about time to start planning some makes for the spring, so maybe more on that in the next episode. News and events. We currently have the Miss Hat Cow going on. I am behind. So I've got the ribbing done, and I'm about to do the pickup for the double brim and then get started on the brioche. So again, I am behind in mine, but maybe you're not in yours, and that is running through Valentine's Day. So you still have time. It's not like a complicated pattern. So if you still want to jump in, please feel free. That is basically just over on Instagram. And everyone who finishes their hat is going to get a copy of the upcoming shawl pattern, which is now called CISZA. So that's the worsted weight brioche shawl that is coming up. And all you have to do is finish up Miss Hat during the Miss Hat Cow. So that's that. And the other thing I want to tell you guys about is that signups are now open for the Swatch Scholar Challenge. So I run this every year. It is a week-long challenge where we perfect our swatching technique. I always do this in the lead up to opening up signups for my Swatch Master e-course, which is the Swatch Master course is going to run in March. The Swatch Scholar Challenge signups are open now, and the actual challenge is going to kick off on whatever the date is of President's Day, that Monday. So if you're not familiar with this, it's basically you sign up. Every day of the challenge, you are going to get an email describing the next part of the challenge, which is basically to make a very nice, neat, useful swatch. And if you are swatch averse or swatch challenged or just don't even know what a swatch is, this is a great experience, and of course it is free. So you just provide your email address, and then you get those emails, and you can kind of participate as much or as little as you like. You know, if you enjoy doing things like posting on Instagram and stuff, we'll be doing that. If you are a very visual learner, there are videos that go along with it. And then of course, everybody who signs up, if you are then interested in taking the Swatch Master e-course, you get a special discount signing up for that e-course. So I will include the link in the information box down below with all of the details that you need to sign up for the Swatch Scholar Challenge and what it's about and all of that. But basically, if you are looking to get a handle on your swatches, this is a good place to start with that. And I think that is it for news and events in this episode. So in this segment, I would like to speak to some ladies and gentlemen that are perhaps of a certain age where we need to come to terms with the fact that our eyesight is not what it used to be. Now, I have always had terrible eyesight. I've been wearing contact lenses since I was 15, but that's because I'm nearsighted. I didn't have problems seeing up close. That is starting to change. And it's actually not so much for reading. But if I am trying to knit or sew and the light isn't as bright as perhaps it should be, or the fabric or yarn is particularly dark, I am starting to find that challenging. So I just wanted to encourage you to perhaps consider, for those situations, investing, and I use that term loosely because they're really cheap, in some reading glasses. So I got these, which I love. Cat eye is like my go-to. This actually came in a pack of 5. I think 4 or 5. I guess because also we're getting old and so we forget things and lose them. And these have come in really handy for my sewing. For example, I showed you guys the KEMPER top. It's a black fabric. I did have to rip out some seams a couple of times and redo them. And picking black thread out of black fabric is challenging. So I got reading glasses that they're like the bare minimum of magnification, but still magnified. And even though, again, I don't actually need them for reading, they really are coming in handy for seeing some things up close when not, of course, due to my age, but because of the lighting, it's difficult to see. So I got a pack, again, I think it's 4 or 5 of these. I got them on Amazon. They were, I don't know, 20 bucks. They're really cute. I mean, I'm sure there are other styles, but I really like cat eye. And there were a bunch of different colors. So this is sort of like the color that is most my speed, but there were some other cute colors in the pack as well. It's worth giving a try if you are also struggling with lighting, to see some of your fabric or your yarn in non-optimal conditions. Maybe you just need to pop these on for those situations. And again, they are adorable, and they were 20 bucks. There are different levels of magnification, so I just got kind of the bare minimum, and they have really helped me out with that. So I just thought I would do a little kind of PSA here for other crafters of a particular age that might be having this challenging issue. All right, guys, that about wraps things up for today. I really wanted to add a new segment where I just kind of give my thoughts on something that's kind of going on in the fiber arts community, or a new tech, just not like a tutorial, but just to kind of discuss it and just provide my thoughts on it. And what I was going to talk about was L-shaped swatches, but I can't find mine. So it's gonna have to wait for another episode. So let's go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 53 of the Hilo Stitch podcast. Links to everything that I have talked about can be found in the show notes at mediaperuana.com/hiloandstitch. A special thank you to my Patreon patrons whose support helps keep this podcast and the whole Media Peruana Knits YouTube channel up and running. So if you are interested in supporting the channel and getting some perks and freebies and behind the scenes goodies, you can find more information at patreon.com/mediaperuana. Here on YouTube, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, share with friends. All of those things help expand the reach of the podcast and the entire Media Peruana Knits channel. If you're looking for me on social media, you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Media Peruana, and I will see you next time.